It started with something unnatural. Farmer Tom had seen a lot in his life: droughts, floods, market crashes, you name it. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for this. One chilly October morning, as mist clung to the valley like an old memory, he spotted something unusual in his field: a cluster of eggs. But not just any eggs, these were black, jet black, smooth, glossy, and strangely uniform. He stopped in his tracks, his breath catching, his boots rooted in place as though the earth itself wanted him to stay and watch. They didn't belong to any of his chickens, and they certainly didn't look like anything you'd find in a typical hen house. For a moment, his brain scrambled for an explanation. Snake eggs, some kind of wild bird, a prank. He scanned the tall grass nervously, half expecting some camouflaged predator to lunge. But the field was empty. Silent, too silent. Still, the eggs were real. He counted them 12, all huddled like they'd been placed there deliberately, as if someone or something had left them behind, knowing he would find them. His logical mind screamed at him to leave them alone, but another voice whispered, what if they were rare, exotic, valuable? A part of him, the dreamer, the risk-taker, the man who hadn't seen a profit in months, decided to take the chance. After all, they were on his property. That made them his, right? Tom muttered a soft apology to whatever creature may have left them and began gently collecting the black orbs. One by one, he placed them into an old crate, the surface of each egg unnervingly cold against his palms. He didn't know what they were. He didn't know what would come out of them. But somehow, deep down, he felt they were meant for him. Back at the farm, the eggs went into his incubator. Tom adjusted the temperature with practiced care. He'd raised poultry all his life, but this was something entirely different. He monitored the humidity levels, rotating the eggs daily, his rough hands moving with surprising delicacy. Days turned into nights. The incubator glowed softly in the darkness of his barn like some sci-fi relic. Every morning, Tom leaned over it, expecting cracks, peeps, anything. But the eggs stayed still. Ominously still. Tom's mind raced. Was he nurturing some predator? Would these things hatch into something dangerous? Would he regret this? Or had he just found the miracle his dying farm so desperately needed? He allowed himself to imagine the headlines. Farmer discovers rare bird saves his farm. Or maybe, strange black chickens sell for thousands meet the man who found them. Hope and fear danced together like shadows under the incubators. Soft light. Weeks passed. The hatching date came and went. Nothing. The shells remained sealed tight, their inky sheen now reflecting more disappointment than wonder. Tom started to feel mocked by them, taunted by his own optimism. Every day he rose before dawn to check on them. Every day. Silence. And then something changed, not in the eggs, but in him. Tom got sick. He'd been burning the candle at both ends, but now his body refused to keep going. Fever overtook him. His muscles ached, and every breath felt like dragging gravel through his lungs. Days blurred together. He couldn't care for the farm, couldn't care for himself. The fields overgrew. The coops became filthy. Chickens stopped laying. The farm, like its owner, started to decay. And all the while, the black eggs sat in the barn and moved, unbroken. Like guardians of a secret they refused to reveal. The neighbors noticed. One by one, they murmured their concerns. Tom's old friend Jake, gruff, loyal, and stubborn as a mule, finally stormed up to the house. He found Tom pale and drenched in sweat, too weak to stand. Jake took over. He fed the chickens, scrubbed the coops, filled the troughs. But Tom, lost in a haze of fever, never got a chance to warn him about the eggs. One evening, as twilight spilled over the valley, Jake heard something unusual coming from the barn. A soft peeping. He froze. That sound, it came from the incubator. Grabbing a flashlight, he rushed inside, heart pounding. The beam swept across the barn, landing on the crate. Their movement. One of the black eggs was hatching. Jake leaned in, eyes wide. lips parted in disbelief. He ran back to the house and burst into Tom's bedroom. "They're hatching," he whispered breathlessly. Tom's eyes opened, glassy but alert. A thin smile crept across his face, too. Days later, Tom could walk again, weak but determined. He and Jake knelt before the incubator like monks before a shrine, together. They watched the first egg split. What emerged wasn't monstrous. It was magnificent, a chick jet black. From beak to claw, its feathers glistening like obsidian. Its tiny eyes, dark and alert, blinked open and scanned its new world. Then another hatched. And another. Each chick looked like it had been sculpted from night itself. Jake pulled out his phone and started frantically searching. "These aren't just black chickens," he murmured. "They're Yamchamani. I'm pretty sure." Tom frowned. Still groggy. "A yam." "What?" "A Yamchamani," Jake repeated. "They're from Indonesia. Super rare. Their feathers, eyes. Even their bones, they're black. Like, all black. They're called Lamborghinis of the chicken world. People pay thousands just for a single one." Tom's breath caught in his throat. Could it be? He didn't say a word. Just let the tears fall. Because for the first time in years, he felt hope. Real, tangible hope. As word spread, neighbors flocked to see the miracle chicks. The once quiet farm buzzed with life again. But the story didn't end there. Tom began building a special enclosure for the Yamchamani. Heat lamps, fresh straw, a proper roost. He documented everything: their behavior, their growth, their diet. These weren't just chickens. They were a second chance at life. And they weren't ordinary, even among a Yamchamani. These chicks were different. They grew faster, stronger. Their feathers shimmered not just black, but iridescent flashes of emerald and violet under sunlight. They were hardy, intelligent, and seemed almost aware. It was as if some ancient lineage had been reborn in Tom's barn. He began to wonder, had they really just appeared on his land? Or had they been sent? When Farmer Tom stumbled upon a dozen jet black eggs scattered across his Georgia farm, something in his gut twisted, not in fear, but in awe. These weren't from his hens, nor from any bird he recognized. For 10 long minutes he stood frozen, hypnotized by their obsidian sheen, as if they had been laid not by nature, but by something otherworldly. His farm, once thriving, was now buckling under debt and dwindling demand. But these eggs, these could be salvation or a curse. Curiosity triumphed over caution. He gently collected them, whispered a half-hearted apology to whatever mysterious creature may have laid them, and placed them into an old incubator. Days turned into weeks. Each morning brought silence, not even a crack or chirp. Doubt crept in like cold wind through a cracked window, and soon after, so did illness. Tom collapsed under the weight of stress and fever, the farm falling into neglect. His longtime friend Jake found him and took over. But Tom, in his haze, forgot to mention the eggs. One evening, as Jake finished feeding the chickens, he heard a faint, eerie peeping from the barn. The black eggs were hatching. What crawled out weren't monsters, but miracles. Chicks cloaked in midnight, their feathers shining within unnatural iridescence. Jake, stunned, looked them up. Yamchamani, the rarest chickens on earth, bred in Indonesia and valued for their all-black features, down to the bone. People paid fortunes for them. Tom, barely able to stand, wept when he saw them finally. Hope. As the chicks grew, something became clear. These weren't just a Yamchamani. They were different, stronger, smarter, glossier, almost supernatural. One chick stood out even more, larger, with shimmering purple-green feathers and piercing blue eyes. A geneticist confirmed it, a rare mutation, never seen before. Word spread like wildfire. Collectors and investors came knocking, including a wealthy man named Mr. Harris, who offered to fund the farm in exchange for a share of the profits. Tom agreed, securing the future he'd nearly given up on. But standing in that barn, watching those black-feathered wonders roam, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper had taken root on his land, something not born from science or chance, but destiny. What laid those eggs? And why him? As prosperity returned, the mystery only grew. Because sometimes salvation comes not with trumpets, but with shadows.